My name is Mehmet Nazim. I was born September 1951. Supposedly the first Turkish Cypriot born in Australia.
My name's Untold Nazim. I was born 24th of March 1956 in Sydney, Australia, Crown Street Hospital.
Dad came out in 1947. His name was Mustafa Nazim. One of the reasons why he came out was there was no employment in Cyprus at the time. During the war, Dad signed up with the British RAF and he got accepted as a pilot. When he went to the RAF base to begin his training, his mother and his family were there outside the fence crying. So he turned back. The opportunities then came up to come to a foreign country. Well, work was on the plan, there was money, there was work. Reason coming here was for about 5 years to go back with a pocket full of money. They would have bought it at Port Said.
Yeah, so there was four of them. Osman Shaban from Limassol, Halil Osman from Malyalı, Hasan Aziz Morali, including my father.
They were on the boat called ex-military Osterius, a troop carrier. Off memory, I think that he said there was about 400 immigrants in one section of the boat alone. Like they were sleeping on shacks on top of one another. Sailed the Indian Ocean and landed in Fremantle.
So when they got to Fremantle, they'd heard about a train that would cross the Nullarbor Plain. And this became very interesting to them. So instead of sailing with the ship, the Asturias, they boarded the train, went across the Nullarbor and through Adelaide, across the Nullarbor to settling in Melbourne. So when they got off in Melbourne, they thought the contact was to get to the Cyprus Club. And those days it was the Greek Cypriot club, because there was no Turks here at the time, or no Turkish Cypriots here at the time. Dragging their suitcases for about 2 hours. Eventually they saw the sign, Cyprus Club. The plan was to ask for a man called Christo. So they asked for Christo. Christo was the manager of the club. Christo said, okay, I'm going to help you because you're in a new land. He put money in their pockets, he fed them, he gave them a couple of weeks accommodation until they could find their feet and settle down. During this time, Dad said to the other three, I want to go to Sydney. And looked around and none of them, the other three were quite settled in Melbourne. They said, no, we're going to settle here.
Yeah. So the majority, because there was a majority of Cypriots at that time settling in Melbourne, most of the Cypriots went to Melbourne and very few came to Sydney.
So when he came up to Sydney, because he spoke Greek Cypriot, he mixed with the Greek Cypriots here. And a man called Adamidis was a chef.
Like they said, work-wise, he started in the Valentine's restaurant as a kitchen hand. Kitchen hand, he progressed to a cook. And from there, I think after 3 or 4 years, he went to Unilever at White Bay, working with the soap factory. They were making Rinso and Persil and all those types of soaps.
So Mum's name was Akile Mustafa. Her brother, Jamal Mustafa, he sent her an invitation to come out to Sydney. And Mum at the time was a nurse working as in the main hospital in Lefkosha as a theatre assistant. So Mum boarded the ship named the Karinya late December 1949, and she arrived in March, Sydney, 1950. Mum's intention was to come to Australia, maybe work a couple of years and go back. So she arrived in March 1950, was introduced to my father then. Rahmetli John Aday said to my mother, I brought you out here for the reason that you're going to marry this guy. They married in May of 1950. Mentioning the fact that Mum was the first Turkish Cypriot bride to be married in Australia.
Yeah, Mercedes was the first one to arrive in Australia as a female, and Mum was the second female. They quickly adapted to the language. You know, working with the Australian public, and that you had no choice but to either learn the language or you're out on the street. Dad did apparently go to an American academy in Cyprus, so he knew some words in English. Mum naturally didn't speak any English at all, but they were both very fluent in Greek. Amongst the Greek community, they were accepted. Jobs were found for them. I think Mum first started working as in a shoe factory somewhere in Waterloo. I remember her painting shoes, stitching. We didn't realise that I was the first Turkish Cypriot born in Australia. Not till 1952, when a Turkish journalist, he was a journalist for the Hürriyet gazeteci, Hikmet Feridun, he came out to interview the Turkish generals that had just finished the Korean War. And when the Turkish generals came to Australia to do their R&R, rest and recreation, the journalists followed them. And this is where they found out that there was Turkish Cypriots here. Amongst his travels, he met the Turkish Cypriots, and he actually said that I was the first Turkish Cypriot born in Australia. There is a photo of me in one of the general's hands holding me in his photo. The Turkish Cypriot women got together and they hand knitted a Turkish flag. I think that flag is in Military Academy Museum in Ankara.
1963 was a turning point for my parents. They had an opportunity, which my father's good old friend, who was his first chef that he worked under, Adamidis, was selling his café in Hay Street. The café had become a very popular meeting area for the Turkish Cypriots. Turks from Turkey would come as well, because Dad would help them, give them credit. He'd feed them, he would give them advice. Word got around quickly that if you arrived in Sydney, the first place you go is the cafe, the fish and chip shop, as it was known.
Working in the soap factory, nobody could say Mustafa then. Or nobody could say Mehmet. You know, their tongues wouldn't twist. So he was nicknamed George. And our other Dayu, Johnny Dayu, he was nicknamed Johnny. Everybody knew him as Johnny Turk.
So they all found an English name for themselves quite quickly. My father looked at my brother and said, Michael, Mick. So he was known as Mick. I was known as Johnny Ringo. He used to get all his Turkish friends, and my job was to do all the shot glasses. They'd drink OP frigate rum, and he'd yell out, Johnny Ringo, another round. So here I'd come out with my little cowboy suit. At the time, foreigners were still fresh in the country, so the term wog wasn't unusual, and of course we would cop the word wog a lot. They'd come into the shop to give Dad a hard time, and they wouldn't want to pay for their food or something, and then a fight would break out. Dad would kick them out. The local police force got to know Dad really well, and sometimes Dad would just grab them and just throw them out in the middle of the street. Either throw them or he'd king hit them. They'd end up in the middle of Hay Street, and the bull wagon would come up and say, well, George, what have you done? And they'd just pick up the drunks and just throw them in the back of the bull wagon and, see you later, George, just take it easy, calm down. Paddy's Market was down the road, and that area at the time, it was like the Wild West. There'd be drunks coming up from the Haymarket Hotel. They'd want to sit down and eat, and then they would refuse to pay, or they'd start swearing at Dad. And, you know, there was all these little things that they had to deal with.
Küçük İbrahim. Küçük İbrahim was one of the guys, he was a single man then. There was Jalaba. Jalaba came, she was with her parents. Osman, Buffalo Osman, Cevdet, Cevdet abi, Ekrem, Erdal abi, who was Cevdet's brother.
Tahir Dayı.
Tahir Dayı. They're early arrivals from Cyprus, so they weren't exactly used to fish and chips and steaks and hamburgers and things like that. They were fretting for Turkish food. So somebody must have mentioned it to Mum. Anne, everyone used to call her Anne. Anne, Türk yemeği yoktur. So Anne would start making, today she'd make fasulye. Tomorrow, if she found something, she'd make some dolma. They had an old oven and she would make küp kebab, fırın kebabı for them. And then they found a nice little machine and he would cut up lamb loin chops and lamb chum chops and make shish kebab for them. So the guys would walk in, dede ne var yiyelim bugün, baba ne var yiyelim?
What's on the special?
What's on the special? That was the hub of the early Turkish Cypriots, especially for the young guys, all the single guys. Sunday night, families would come in.
Yeah, Hussey's family.
Hussey's family.
Hussey's family always used to be regulars.
Really?
The Kashif family.
Kashif family with regulars, they'd be sitting there.
Yeah.
Like Minaverdeza would turn up with Mehmet Dayı, her husband, have a meal on a Sunday night. It was like a little gulup. Everyone would get together and that was...
Yeah. Well, there was a photo in the shop on the back wall of Mustafa Kemal. And Dad took a lot of pride in that photo. A lot of the customers would come in, they'd look at the photo, they'd look at Dad, and they'd say, "Is that your father?" And Dad would say, "Yes, that is my father."
And it's true. It's the father of all of us. 1967, Dad decided to buy a second shop out of Chalora. It was a takeaway barbecue chicken place. Minaverdeza would come to our shop and she was employed by Mum and Dad and she would help us out during the week. And of course, being the mother duck, following her would be the little chicks. And one of the little chicks was Fatima and Minaverdeza. And they would be out the back playing amongst about 13 or 15 bags of potatoes then. The bag of potato was about 55 kilos. So they'd be chasing one another, playing hide and seek behind all these spuds. Some of the hardships that I endured as I was growing older was being dark-skinned, dark-haired, not fair, being called a wog 24/7. And it was very hard to grow up being called a wog. Because we were only about 200 or 300 metres away from the school, Dad enrolled me in the St Michael's Catholic. Every morning you had to go to Mass, which was about 7 o'clock in the morning prior to the studies. Being a Muslim, the Dad would not allow me, or Baba would not allow me to go to Mass. The headmistress of the school decided to come home and interview Mum and Dad why young Mick is not going to Mass. And as she stepped in the front door, she saw a massive photo of a mosque, Hagia Sophia, in Istanbul. She said, "Are you Muslim?" And Dad said, "Yes, of course, we are Muslim." "Oh, that's why your son is not coming to Mass in the morning." So Dad said, "Yes, correct." "Then I'll have to ask you to, we'll have to terminate your son's time at our school, and if you could find another public school and take him there because we can't have Muslims. It's a Catholic school." And Dad said, "No problem." And he enrolled me in Stanmore Public School. So just before I left school at St Michael's, a young bloke smacked me in the mouth and I ended up with a fat lip. After a few years at Stanmore Public School, I met up with this guy and it was called payback. And I gave him a fat lip. Day one at high school, I had a natural mow. Well, those days your dad don't know how to shave. So when I went to school the first day, I had four Australian boys come up to me and they said, "Listen, Wog, get rid of the mow or we're going to cut it off tomorrow." I said, "Dad, böyle mesele." What his reply was a tokat. He said, bu yaşta 13 yaşında tıraş olacaksın. Olmaz öyle şey. Again, I was fronted by the same blokes. They said, listen, Wog, you didn't cut the mow off. We're going to cut it off. Before he finished his sentence, I took out the first guy who had glasses, took out the second guy. By then, teacher on duty at the day, spotted everything, took me up to the headmaster, and it was 6 cuts, bang, bang, bang, bang. So it was welcome to high school.
So I went back to Stanmore for year 6. On my first day, I had 5 fights. So I had to establish myself really fast. And then after they realised, oh, this guy can fight, keep away, I settled in.
You were respected.
Yeah. You had to earn your respect, especially if you were a Wog, or definitely if you were a Wog.
He arrived in 1947 and he went back for the first time in 1986. Yeah. Supposedly it came for 1 or 2 years, fill up the pockets and go back. But the pockets were filling up well, the rivers were running good, so they decided to stay and keep filling their pockets. It was totally different than what they knew, you know. He lost total contact with his uncles, aunties, his cousins. It was very hard to go back and introduce yourself.
But he did find them, especially the Turkish people in Malya. Yeah, they settled in a certain area in Cyprus. So once he went into that area, they found him. Word was out. Yeah, Mustafa was back. Yeah. His cousins would come out. Yeah, some of them were Banga Müdürs. There was an assortment of them, yes. Yeah, they found him. Yeah, look, Mum and Dad, they loved Australia because it was the new beginning for them, their family, they had their children here. I don't think they ever regretted it, but they always, my father especially, would always say, look, yabancı memleketteyiz. In other words, we're in a strange country. I always want to go back there to be buried.
They'll never bury me in this country.
So
that's my wish.
Had they not come here, we may not have happened. Our family story may not have happened. We're very, very happy and proud that our parents came to Australia to start a new beginning. In hindsight, Mum and Dad regretted the fact that they never saw their parents when their parents passed away. Myself and my brother, we didn't see our grandparents, although my brother did manage to see my nana on Dad's side for 3 days before she passed away. They used to look at each other and think, well, we don't regret coming. We had children, we raised a beautiful family. Our 2 boys went back to Cyprus. My brother met his wife to be, Shazia, back in 1977, and in 1982 I went back, met Chiller, my beautiful wife. We had 3 children each. My brother had 3 children, and my family had 3 children. So Mum and Dad deep down were very, very proud of the fact that we achieved all this. We also tried to raise our family amongst the Turkish Cypriot traditions, and hopefully that they would continue those traditions amongst themselves in the future. In this respect, Mum and Dad were very, very proud and very, very happy to have come to the new land.